disease. They had, okay,
Sorry
there
about
we,
that. Laura
it's
reminded me
okay.
I didn't hit record.
That's good. Okay, so I had a speaker. He was a physician and very well known for Parkinson's disease, and he did a lecture for the Parkinson's disease support group, and it was just, his speaking ability was perfect. The timing was perfect. He would say things, give people time to, you know, take it in, and then he would ask questions, and he would always ask for feedback. And I mean, his presentation was very informative because the audience did not know the information he was presenting also, so he was very clear in his definitions.
Great. That's a wonderful example.
Mm.
Anyone else have an example?
Hi, Angela. It's Renitha.
Hello, Renee.
And I had a presenter who, he reminds me of the image on the screen because he came out with an Afro wig on, and he had background music, and he immediately like turned up the energy in the room from 0 to 100. So that presentation really stuck with me. And, you know, at some point he reverted back to, you know, his usual presentation attire, but just, and he used music throughout the presentation with, you know, really upbeat songs, and that really engaged the audience as well. So that presentation has really made a lasting impression with me.
So the key to the first person was really knowing the audience and giving them some new information and including the audience in what was going on. Okay, so that's what I took away from it. And this one, you're talking about energy and enthusiasm and music, and sort of, you know, that matters. Have the energy that you have, that you bring in the room, whether it's virtual or physical, it matters. That kind of like aura you're bringing, right? Anyone else have someone they'd like to talk about?
I just want to ask Renitha a question. Renitha, was your presenter, was he a stand-up comedian?
No, he wasn't. And his name is Dr. Adolph Brown, and he's actually going to be presenting at Rush, I believe, on the 24th.
Really?
Yes. And it's something that if people, it's in Rush News, I can't think of the name of his talk, but it's in Rush News. And if you can be there, 12 to 1, I believe, on the 20. No. What day is it?
Today's the 25th.
Oh my God.
Don't tell me it was yesterday.
No. Maybe it's tomorrow. It's still coming up. And
okay.
Yeah, so it's Dr. Adolph Brown, and he has everybody up and moving and dancing and clapping. And
oh my,
awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I wanted to tell you a little story before we move on. And if anyone else wants to speak, feel free. But I had a presenter at a conference. There's two presenters that stick out to me, and one I'm going to be talking about at the very end. And so I'll wait and tell you about him then. But this other presenter, I've seen him several times at different conferences. And we actually kind of sat and had drinks together at one of the conferences. He's just a fun person to talk to. But what he did, he engaged me so much that I did not get up to go to the bathroom. I was leg shaking. That's how bad I needed to get up out of my seat, but I didn't want to miss anything he was saying. And that to me was like, wow, if you've got me that focused on you and your presentation, and that's kind of hard to do. I'm easily distracted by other things going on, and you really got to grab me and you got to hold my attention. Here it is. Brandon's sharing in the chat, by the way, right here. So if you want to check the chat, you can see what's going on. So it was his energy. So that was part of it. It was his humor. It was his ability to share information that we needed to know in a very succinct way. So he shared a lot of charts, a lot of pictures, a lot of data, but not a lot of stuff on his slides. His slides were just very kind of bare bones, except for when he shared data. And then it was shared in a very visually appealing way. But yeah, he was phenomenal. I think he works for Desire to Learn now. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because, and when you go to conferences or you attend sessions, watch these people because you'll know what not to do and you'll know what you should do. And when you're thinking about the topic, you can also think, wow, how is this presenter really capturing my attention or not capturing my attention? And it's something to remember for your own self when it comes time for you to do a presentation, whether it's at a conference or whether it's for your students. Because the students, it matters to them too. So moving on, here are some other tools that you can use other than PowerPoint. So most people who know me think that I am a complete PowerPoint hater, but that's not true. I do use the tool. I don't use it for presentations, but I use it for other things. But here are some options. So for example, what I am using now is Google Slides. If you have a Mac, a Keynote is wonderful. I do have a Mac, but I just don't use Keynote because I prefer the Google Slides. I guess I'm kind of used to using it. Canva is a visually appealing tool that you can use to create presentations, infographics, social media posts for marketing, Facebook posts. You can do all kinds of really interesting things with Canva. Prezi got a bad rap for a while because of the movement that it can do, but it's changed over the years and you don't have to make people motion sick when you're using Prezi. So there are other options for that one. Visme is an option. Pear Deck is used a lot in K-12, but I think that there's still room to be able to use it for undergrad and grad students. You'll have to check it out. There's some interactivity to Pear Deck that's built right in that you might like as a faculty member. Mentimeter is also one of those. I think Mentimeter is a little more simplistic than Pear Deck, but there's also, again, built-in interactivity. And what I mean by that is you can use Poll Everywhere as an add-on to PowerPoint. You can use Poll Everywhere as a add-on to Google Slides. But these two at the very bottom have built-in things that you can ask to your audience, and they use their phones to be able to reply, and the answers will pop up in the presentation. So it's not like adding something on, it's just built right in. So if you want to take notes on these and see if you might like something else, I would say out of all of these, the easiest is Google Slides. It's definitely simple. It doesn't have all of the options of PowerPoint if you like to do fancy things, but I tend to not use fancy things in my presentation. So any questions about these options or any options that you also suggest other than these?
What about Sway? I use that one a lot and I like it because you can import like your PowerPoints or your Word documents and go ahead and it kind of does it all for you and it actually can create your visual. But I love Sway. And then at the end, you can make a PDF of everything so that that can actually be given to the students.
Thank you for the reminder. I just forgot about it. So Sway, I'll add that to this slide deck. I'll add it here because I forgot about Sway. Awesome. So let's talk about your slides, shall we? I think this is the biggest thing that you can do to improve your presentation is improve your slides. So look at your backgrounds that you're going to use for your slides, okay? I think plain white and plain black can be really, really boring. I know at Rush, we have a slide template that we use. To me, it is so boring. I absolutely hate it when I have to create a presentation using our slide template at Rush. I don't know if you like it, but I really like to have a bit of a freedom with choosing the way that slides look. If you see the image on the left here, you have to be careful about not covering up anything, about the colors of the text that you use. It might look okay to you, but any student with any type of visual impairment, it's really good to have high contrast. Oh, I guess I do get to see who pops in. I didn't know that. I thought I didn't get to see that when I'm presenting, but I'm glad to know. Anyway, be careful with that. Every slide does not have to be the identical thing. So I like to use slide decks that have similar color schemes. Though this is a little bit, this one's different. I think I have all blue in my background, but sometimes I like to use like a 3-color palette. So I'll have white, I'll have blue, and then like a green, okay, as an example. And then the slides just vary. The thing is, you need to be consistent with everything else, but your background doesn't have to be exactly the same. And your background can be just an image. You can have just an image and absolutely no text whatsoever. Some of the best presenters I've ever seen, including the one I'm going to talk about at the very end, doesn't really have words on the slides. It's just an image that corresponds to what it is they're speaking about. So that's something to keep in mind too. Of course, in that situation, you have to really, really know what you're talking about and remember your presentation very, very well to not have the words up on the screen to remind you of where you need to be. So like I said, paying a close attention to the colors that you're using. High contrast is very important. This is a link to a color calculator that will show you what are some complementary colors to a color that you're using. Hopefully I can get all of you these slides, or we can link to the slides in the YouTube video, right, Laura? Like if I put this on OneDrive and have it open, they'll be able to click it and see the slides, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think so. We'll just link it under the video when Laura puts it up on YouTube. Fonts. You have to be careful with the fonts that you use because they can be extremely distracting to what it is that you're trying to say. And I haven't said it yet, but what you say is the most important thing. What's on the screen that they're seeing is just second to what it is that you are talking about. So you want people to focus on you and what you're telling them, not focus on what's behind you or what's on your slides. So if you have a lot of words, okay, on your slides and they're sitting there reading, they're not listening to you. They're reading and you're the blah, 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 blah in the background. And once they're done reading, you're already done talking and they're like, oh man, I missed everything that she said because I was too busy reading everything that's on the slides. You want the font to be easy to read. It doesn't have to be Times New Roman. It can be Georgia. It needs to be something very easily readable for people. I would avoid using italics like you see here, italics and the funky thing that the words are written in right here, and then use the same font throughout your presentation. That's where you want to remain consistent. You don't want your presentation to feel like it's unorganized. You want it to feel like it's really well put together. And so keeping a consistent font that's easy to read, but it doesn't have to be Times New Roman, okay? Using bold and underline as needed. I think sometimes using a different font if you want special emphasis on a word is okay. Like strategically using italics or strategically using something bold and a little bit bigger. There's nothing wrong with that, but everything else should remain consistent. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. This is another thing. I would avoid using word art, which is something you can do in PowerPoint. I mean, it kind of looks cool, right, to have the little backgrounds, but there's a lot of funky things that it can do, which I think might be difficult for people with visual impairments or anything like that. So I would avoid the word art. Images. Get some really good images. All right. I think one negative that I see people doing with their PowerPoint presentations or other presentations is they'll have text, but then a bunch of random images like clip art, like thrown in that could be sort of related to what they're talking about. They're just like kind of randomly put on the screen. If you want to use images, make sure that you pick them and pick them well. And you really only need one, whether it covers your entire screen or just part of the screen, or a little, it's a larger kind of thumbnail on the screen, but pick a good one. What we like to use in City is freepick.com. It's not expensive to get a Free Pick Pro account, which gives you access to a lot more images that you don't have to put down here. You don't have to cite them. You have a pro account, okay? If you don't have a pro account, then you definitely need to provide a citation. And well, it's always good to provide citations anyway, even if you don't have to. You want to have the text in close proximity. So see how there's a bit of a balance here? You've got the image, you've got the text, and everything seems to be in balance. So look at that when you're creating your slides. Do I have good balance? Make sure your text is big enough, your image is big enough, and stay consistent with the type. And what I mean by that is if you have like a cartoony type image that you're using in the beginning, you need to stick with cartoony images for the rest of it to keep that consistent look and feel. If you're using real images, realistic type of images like this, like real people's faces, that type of thing, keep them all very realistic throughout your presentation instead of going back and forth between image types. Like if you have, just black and white in the beginning and then you're throwing in color, you might want to consider that too, is sticking with color or sticking with black and white. It provides that kind of cohesive experience. I want to check the chat real quick. Thank you, Brandon. Barb asked a great question in here, backing up to the rush template that I was complaining about some minutes ago. I don't think you have to use the rush template at conferences. But for example, when I had to present at the board, that's something where we use the rush template. And on our YouTube channel, we do use the rush template's first page as the thumbnail, as the main screen. Just, I guess, because people will know what they're looking at. But at a conference, I don't think you're forced to do that. And like I said before, you can just use one image on the slide. As long as you know what you're talking about and you can talk about it with confidence, with energy, you may not even need text. Students might like it, but you can always provide students with an outline. So once things get back to sort of kind of normal and we have more face-to-face classes, instead of feeling like you have to put all the words on your slide that the students need to know, you might be able to just write them an outline of what it is you're going to cover in the PowerPoint presentation, and they can use that outline to take notes on paper, to take electronic notes. So that's where you can even use that as your cheat sheet to make sure that you're on track. They'll pay a lot more attention to you and a lot less attention to reading your slides. See, now we're talking about words. Make sure you know the purpose of your presentation as you're going into it. Sometimes words are not required, like I just said, on your slide, especially if you are given like a motivational speech or you're trying to get people to try something new and that kind of thing. In an educational situation, I can see why words feel a little bit more required. Oh, look, I said provide an outline. I got ahead of myself. That sometimes can happen, right? It's like you just think these things and you say them before your slides say them. But that's okay. It's worth repeating that you can provide an outline for your students and they can keep notes. Keep words short. 6 lines is ideal for a slide. 6 words, 6 lines. Okay, 6 words per line, 6 lines is, I believe, I don't know who made that up, but I just remember that. But sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes it's really hard to keep only 6. I think I even broke that rule in this presentation in a different slide because I just had a lot to put on one slide. So I have more than 6. I think I might have 7 or 8. Any questions so far about images or words? It's so hard not seeing you. I feel like I'm talking to a black screen. Ugh, that's frustrating. It's frustrating I get that those of you who are teaching remotely and you're either meeting with your students sometimes synchronously and it's like talking to a blank screen, that can be really tough. All right, moving on to the presenting bit of this. As you all have seen, sometimes people are just really, really skilled presenters and they just make it seem like it's natural, right? Like they were born to do that. In City, I think I've seen Peg present because she presented with me and she's just one of those people. I'm like, you're just born to do this. You just make this look so easy to just engage the audience and talk to them and get them excited. And but just because you're not that way doesn't mean that you can't do it. So here are some things that will help you out. Know your topic really, really well. And you have to know and believe why this topic is important, whether it's for your students or whether it's for an audience or whether it's for your colleagues. Its importance is crucial because you have to get that importance across to your audience. Like for me, the art of presenting, the creating slides, you can make or break a teaching session by having really crappy presentation and really bad slides, right? You can just become like the teacher of the century for some students if you really know how to present to them. And it takes a little bit of practice if it's not a natural thing for you to do. It doesn't mean you can't. Oh, I didn't know you were here, Peg.
I snuck in at the last minute, but thank you for the compliments.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Telling stories. If you know anything about learning, okay, about how learning works with the brain, we are creatures of oral tradition, and stories bring things to life. It makes things stick. Having sort of an emotional reaction to what it is that you are hearing / seeing will really help the audience get engaged with you. It also makes you a real person. It makes you approachable. It makes you relatable. Okay. So as often as you can, tell stories. I just did with telling the story about Peg. And in the beginning, you told me stories. And I told you the story about the presenting guy. And I'm going to tell you a story about one more presenting guy. Why is it a guy? It's not on purpose that it's just a guy, but in my situation, there are guys that I'm talking about. Anyway, cater to your audience, which means if you are able to, like for right now, I don't know what you're doing. You could be totally like watching a soap opera and just having me on in the background. I'm like, wah, 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 you could be completely engaged with me. You can be like, whoa, listen to this. So I have no idea because I can't see my audience, but hopefully you'll be able to see your audience or maybe in the future, see your audience. Okay. But cater to them and kind of what they need. Sometimes you'll get questions when you're presenting either from students or from an audience, and it might throw you off a little bit with what you're trying to do, but that's okay. I think as educators, we learn the art of answering a question and hopefully getting back to the topic. That might take a little bit of a practice, but I think it's good to let the audience sort of guide you as you're presenting, and it may be a little bit different than what you had planned, but being flexible and being resilient with that, I think is good. Repeating important information is not a bad thing. So for example, like I said, you don't need to put so many words on your slides. You can provide them with an outline. Make sure you know what you're talking about, et cetera, et cetera. Repeating stuff strategically will help people remember it, will help it stick in their minds, and hopefully with students recall it later. Engaging the audience. Oh my gosh. So the first guy, why am I forgetting his name? Bruce, I think his name is Bruce, and I can't remember his last name. It's been a long time since I've seen him. Here's what he did. So he had this plan with interactivity throughout his presentation with our phones. Okay. Lo and behold, the internet just stopped working at the conference. I don't know if you've been to one of those conferences before when the internet went down. I did as a presenter, and my entire presentation was on stuff to show people on the internet. I never sweated so badly in my life as that. That was at the Missouri Distance Learning Association conference. It was awful. So, but for this guy, for this Bruce dude, this is what he did. It was the craziest thing. He just flew by the seat of his pants. He did rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors with a huge audience of higher education professionals. Answer this question with rock, paper, scissors. And then I just said, oh, this is the answer because there's no more scissors than, it was hilarious. Oh my goodness. So see what I mean? We were just instantly engaged, even though the internet wasn't working and we couldn't do what he had planned to do. It's like we still did it. Asking the audience questions, asking them to share their stories. Sometimes that's a rabbit hole. You have to weigh the risks on that one. Doing something a little bit unexpected. Here's an example of that, or a story about that. The presentation I was talking about with Peg was before the COVID pandemic hit and we were all face to face, and we decided to make our presentation a theme of the Wild West. And so guess what we did? We dressed up as cowgirls. I had my boots, I had my jeans, I had my country looking shirt, I had my hat, the whole bit. We dressed up as cowgirls. I mean, how unexpected is that for people to walk in and be like, oh my gosh, we had country music playing in the background. What was that song? Was it like a theme of what was that show?
It was the whistling from the Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, it was Clint Eastwood. I forget. I don't remember, whatever. You probably know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
I'll find it.
Yeah, having something a little bit unexpected, that novelty of surprising your audience, surprising your students. Somebody probably shared it. Let me see. No, not that. Yeah, popping up, doing a pop quiz, doing polling. Yeah, that's that interactive bit. There was a tool called Top Hat that I tried to bring to Rush when I first, so sorry. When I first got that, the job here. And Top Hat is a lecture sort of engaging platform. And I still hope that it would be interesting to Rush faculty at some point. Right now is not the time because of what's going on. But it is so interactive. It makes classes so interactive just by the nature of it as software. So if you look up Top Hat, you'll see what I'm saying. Indiana University uses it extensively. And the last thing on that other slide was that visuals do matter. And I don't just mean like on your slide, but when you're presenting, how you actually present yourself. I'm not saying any of us would present ourselves unprofessionally, but just keep in mind, what are you wearing? Is your hair brushed? How you look as an audience in a physical space how you present yourself, not necessarily your looks. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're at a professional conference, making sure that you look very professional, make sure your buttons are buttoned, your pants are zipped. I've seen that happen, right? For women, that just could be the worst thing in front of hundreds of people having an episode with your outfit. So visuals actually do matter. Okay, I promised you that I would talk about Michael Wetch. He is amazing. He's amazing as he's actually a teacher. He's just a college teacher. And he is a fabulous professor and fabulous educator. If you look him up on YouTube, I have a link here to an example of an older presentation that he did for TEDx. But you can also look him up on YouTube and he can show you, he has like a whole series on making educational videos. It's for faculty. He's fancy. So I can't expect anybody to get to his level of making instructor videos because he's very skilled at it. But some of the very basic things that he shares about creating instructor videos, I think are really important. I know that's not what this topic is about, but it's related. Because if you make asynchronous instructor videos that your students are going to watch later, you'll want to know how to do that in a very effective way. And this is one part of it. Whatever it is that you're sharing with your students, your presentation, even if you're doing a screencast with Screencast-O-Matic, the way that you present that material matters. Okay, just like we're doing here, this is a virtual presentation. It all matters. The visuals of it all, how, your energy, the way you engage your audience, all matters. So like I said, for those who came in late, when this is put on YouTube, our YouTube channel, if you go in the chat, way up at the top of the chat, I think it's the first thing in the chat is a link to our channel, and you can subscribe to it, and you'll be notified when we add more videos. Laura is our resident YouTube person who puts these workshops on YouTube. And then underneath in the description area, we'll provide a link to this slide deck because there are a couple of things I have linked in here. But I saw Michael Wetch at an EDUCAUSE conference in Chicago when I was not working at Rush. I was working at IU. And he was another one of those that I didn't want to get out of my seat. I don't remember what the topic was. Now it's been too long, but I just remember the audience was packed and people did not get up and leave. You've been to those keynote presentations where it's so boring, it's so dull, and you're like, why am I even sitting here? I could be drinking coffee, I could be getting some work done, but he's not like that. Anything else anybody would like to share? Oh, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So she found the music. Anything else anybody would like to share about the art of presenting, tips that you use that other faculty could benefit from, anything like that, stories? It's open now for you to talk.
This is Peg. I'll jump in because I think one of the hardest things to do in the virtual environment and one of the most effective things to do in the virtual environment is to get other people to chime in, because that dead silence on the other end of the mic is
right that I just had.
I know it's horrifying, it's terrifying, because you think, oh my god, they're not even listening, they're not even here. So one thing, I know that people discourage cold calling on students because they don't want to put them on the spot.
I don't discourage it.
I don't either. And I actually, and I don't pinion them and say you must answer, but I give them the opportunity. So I would say, hey, Alex, what do you think about this? And if Alex doesn't have an answer or doesn't say anything, then I'll move on to the next person. But I will cold call people to get them to respond. And usually once the dam is broken, one person responds, then hopefully someone else will respond in kind, and it starts to generate that conversational feel.
Right. And that's a great example because I have done that as well. And people don't necessarily feel comfortable being called out, but you know what? It's okay. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say anything. But if you just want to share a reflection on something that this presentation made you think about a little bit more, I'm open to hear that. We learn so much from each other, not necessarily just from the person speaking. Hey, Barb. My mouse was on you. Do you have anything to share? Anything you're thinking about?
Hi. The one thing I was thinking as when you asked this question and reflecting a bit is it is hard. You've already mentioned it as you were presenting when you're full screen, you don't see, even if people have their cameras on, you can't really see it. You're focused on your presentation. And just like you have here, you have Brandon, Peg, Laura, having a second faculty on,
Yes.
it doesn't always work out that way, but when we've been able to have the presenter and another faculty on, it's really helpful. First of all, that other person can monitor the chat. That other person can keep the videos open and scan the students a bit. Can answer, start the conversation when there's dead space. But that's not always possible in terms of, everybody's workload and how courses are assigned. But, to have another faculty with you is, I think, on this online platform is important.
And this is Brandon. One of the things you can do with that, because you're right, it's hard to get another faculty. You can actually use students. A lot of people use students, undergrad, grad, K-12. So you rotate, go back to the kindergarten days, who's going to be the helper for that day or that session or that particular part, and just have students, help you monitor the chat or, things of that nature with that. So that's also a resource. One other thing I would add,
Great idea.
With the presentation, I frequently put a QR code in the presentation because people always ask, can you send that to me or whatever, at conferences or whatever. And so I put that QR code at the beginning slide or one of the early slides to give people a chance to scan that. So the QR code, in case you don't know, is a little dotted box that you see on everything almost. And they just scan that with their phone or tablets with the camera, and it'll pop up the link and go right to the presentation.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good suggestion too. And creating QR codes is super simple. You can actually download an app on your phone and use your phone to do it. You can do it online. And then you can link the presentation to that code or anything, really, anything that's a link to that particular code. Anyone else have anything to say?
This is Kathy. I think it's been a great presentation, and I think you brought up a lot of really important things to keep in mind. And the thing that I love the stuff that you had to say about you want your slides to be engaging, but really the presentation is about you. And sometimes I know for myself, I get overly concerned about, I think it's important in terms of what you have on the slide, but I think the important thing to remember is the engagement that you have with your audience.
Yeah.
And that when you go to practice, I don't know how other people approach presentations, but I know for myself, I try to go through, practice it so that when I actually do present it, it's more that I'm engaging in a conversation, let alone reading what's on the slide, because I think that is so important. And some of the tips you have about telling a story, I think, is good. I think the more comfortable you are with the content and the more natural you are in front of your audience, the more you will engage them and bring them in. And I think that's really important.
Those are really great tips. Thank you so much. Well, I would like to thank all of you for coming today. I wanted to make sure and to not take an hour because I know everyone is so busy. And the quicker we can get you some content, I think the better. Brandon put it in the chat. a way to create QR codes. There you go, right there. You can grab that link as well. So I hope everyone has a wonderful last couple of days of the week and enjoy the nice weather this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Angela.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Take
Gonna go
care.
out for a
Bye-bye.
walk.
Much appreciated. Bye-bye.
Thank
You're
you. Great
welcome.
show.